Hollywood actor Val Kilmer has died following a long health battle. His family releasing a statement saying the cause was pneumonia.
Val Kilmer, the man who embodied Iceman in Top Gun, Jim Morrison in The Doors, and the Caped Crusader in Batman Forever, has left an indelible mark on Hollywood. His intensity on screen captivated audiences for decades, creating memorable characters that have stood the test of time. But behind the glamour of his Hollywood career, a more complex story has been unfolding. One that few fans have been privy to until recent revelations about his estate came to light. As news began to circulate about discoveries made while assessing Kilmer's estate, the entertainment world was stunned. What began as a routine evaluation of the actor's holdings revealed unexpected aspects of his life away from the cameras: collections, correspondences, and creative works that painted a picture of Val Kilmer that diverged significantly from his public persona. The first surprising discovery came in the form of an extensive art collection that few knew Kilmer had amassed. Hidden away in storage facilities and his New Mexico ranch were hundreds of paintings, sculptures, and mixed media pieces that reflected a sophisticated eye and decades of careful acquisition. Art experts brought in to appraise the collection noted that Kilmer had gravitated toward emerging artists before they achieved recognition, showing an uncanny ability to identify talent before the market caught up. Documents found alongside these works revealed that Kilmer had studied art history extensively during hiatuses between film projects, developing an expertise that few outside his immediate circle knew he possessed. More surprising than the art itself was the discovery that Kilmer had created many pieces in the collection. Hidden among works by recognized artists were paintings and sculptures created by Kilmer himself, often under various pseudonyms. These pieces, dating back to the early 1990s, revealed a level of artistic talent that he had rarely discussed in interviews. Journals accompanying these works showed that Kilmer had studied under several notable artists during breaks from filming, developing techniques that allowed him to express emotions and ideas he felt constrained from sharing in his public life. These artistic pursuits seemed to provide Kilmer with an emotional outlet during difficult periods in his career. Several works dated from the troubled production of The Island of Dr. Moreau, a notoriously difficult shoot that damaged Kilmer's reputation in Hollywood. The paintings from this period express frustration, isolation, and a sense of being misunderstood, themes that would recur throughout his personal artwork. While his behavior on that set earned him the reputation of being difficult, his private artistic expression revealed someone struggling to maintain his creative integrity in a compromising environment. Perhaps most valuable among Kilmer's creative works was an extensive collection of journals and unpublished manuscripts that spanned his entire career. Beginning with his time at Juilliard and continuing through his most recent projects, these writings offered an unfiltered view into the mind of an actor often characterized as enigmatic and difficult. The journals revealed Kilmer as a deeply thoughtful artist, constantly analyzing his performances, questioning his choices, and striving for an authenticity that sometimes put him at odds with directors and studio executives focused primarily on commercial considerations. These writings also shed new light on some of Kilmer's most famous roles. His preparation for portraying Jim Morrison, for instance, was documented in thousands of pages of notes, poetry written in Morrison's style, and detailed analyses of the singer's vocal patterns and mannerisms. Similar documents existed for many of his iconic roles, revealing a level of preparation and psychological investment that went far beyond what most actors undertake. These materials not only hold significant value for film historians, but also challenge the narrative that Kilmer's intensity on set stemmed from egotism rather than deep artistic commitment. Another unexpected discovery was an extensive collection of Native American art and artifacts that Kilmer had gathered during his time living in New Mexico. While his interest in Native American culture was publicly known, the scale and quality of this collection surprised even those familiar with his New Mexico property. Documentation accompanying these pieces showed that Kilmer had worked directly with tribal representatives to ensure ethical acquisition and proper cultural respect, often paying above market value to support Native artists and communities. His private correspondence revealed plans to eventually establish a museum dedicated to preserving and honoring these cultural works. a vision he had shared with few people outside the Native American communities he supported. The estate evaluation also uncovered evidence of numerous charitable endeavors that Kilmer had funded, anonymously throughout his career. Financial records showed millions of dollars donated to various causes: children's hospitals, arts education programs, wildlife conservation efforts, and Native American community initiatives, all structured to keep his involvement private. Former associates confirmed that Kilmer had been adamant about conducting his philanthropy without publicity, believing that public acknowledgement would diminish the sincerity of his contributions. This revelation contrasted sharply with his public image as self-involved and difficult, suggesting a generosity of spirit that he deliberately kept separate from his Hollywood persona. One of the most surprising discoveries was an extensive collection of correspondence between Kilmer and other notable actors, directors, and artists. Thousands of letters, emails, and notes that revealed deep, thoughtful relationships that rarely made it into public view. These exchanges showed Kilmer regularly seeking and offering advice, engaging in profound discussions about art and spirituality, and maintaining friendships even with individuals with whom he had reportedly feuded professionally. The contrast between these warm, articulate exchanges and his reputation for being difficult to work with suggested that Kilmer's public image captured only a limited dimension of his actual personality and relationships. Particularly notable were hundreds of letters exchanged with Marlon Brando, an actor Kilmer had portrayed in the film The Island of Dr. Moreau, and with whom he was rumored to have clashed. The correspondence revealed a complex but respectful relationship that continued until Brando's death, with the two actors discussing everything from acting techniques to spiritual philosophy. Similar exchanges existed with directors like Oliver Stone and actors including Robert De Niro and Meryl Streep, evidence of professional relationships far more substantial and nuanced than reported in entertainment media. The estate also contained extensive materials related to film projects Kilmer had attempted to develop throughout his career. Dozens of screenplays, treatment options, and production plans for films that never made it to production. These included a detailed biopic about Mark Twain that Kilmer had spent over a decade developing, accumulating research materials, location scouting photographs, and multiple screenplay drafts. His notes revealed a deep connection to Twain as a fellow artist who used humor to mask deeper social commentary and personal pain, a parallel that offered insight into Kilmer's own approach to his public persona. Other unrealized projects included a documentary series on Native American history, an experimental film about the creative process, and adaptations of several literary works that had personal significance to Kilmer. The extensive development materials for these projects revealed an ambitious creative vision that extended far beyond acting, suggesting that Kilmer had aspired to move into directing and producing roles that would have allowed him greater creative control. Financial records indicated that he had invested substantial personal funds into developing these projects, often continuing to work on them even after studios had passed or initial funding had fallen through. Among the most poignant discoveries was a collection of materials related to Kilmer's battle with throat cancer. Journals, medical correspondence, spiritual texts, and artwork created during his treatment and recovery. These materials documented not just the physical challenges of his illness, but also the profound psychological and spiritual journey it precipitated. Journals from this period revealed a man confronting his mortality, reevaluating his life choices, and finding new meaning in creative expression when his ability to communicate verbally became compromised. Artwork created during his illness took on a different character from his earlier pieces, more abstract, more focused on color and form rather than representation, suggesting an evolution in his creative expression as his circumstances changed. Accompanying writings indicated that losing his voice, his primary tool as an actor, had forced him to develop new means of expression, ultimately expanding rather than diminishing his creative range. These materials offered a window into how Kilmer had transformed a devastating health crisis into an opportunity for spiritual and artistic growth. The estate evaluation also revealed Kilmer's extensive research into Christian Science, the religious tradition in which he was raised, and to which he returned more fully during his health crisis. Beyond just religious texts, his collection included historical analyses of the movement, biographical materials about its founder Mary Baker Eddy, and journals documenting his own evolving relationship with its teachings. These materials showed a deeply thoughtful engagement with his faith rather than the blind adherence sometimes attributed to him in media coverage of his illness. Notes from this period revealed his struggle to reconcile Christian Science principles with conventional medical treatment, a nuanced personal journey that differed significantly from the simplified narrative presented in entertainment news. Perhaps most surprising to those familiar with his public image were the extensive materials related to Kilmer's role as a father. Photo albums, videos, letters, and journals documenting his relationships with his children, Mercedes and Jack. While his divorce from their mother, Joanne Whalley, had been public and sometimes contentious, these private materials painted a picture of a dedicated father who prioritized his relationship with his children despite the complications of co-parenting after divorce and the demands of an acting career. Letters between Kilmer and his children revealed a warm, supportive relationship and an ongoing effort to remain present in their lives, despite geographical separation and professional obligations. The estate contained thousands of photographs documenting not just Kilmer's professional accomplishments but his personal life away from cameras, hiking expeditions, fishing trips, family gatherings, and quiet moments at his beloved New Mexico ranch. These images revealed someone who found solace and renewal in nature, who cherished time away from Hollywood's demands, and who maintained lifelong friendships outside the entertainment industry. The contrast between these images and the polished, carefully managed photographs from publicity events suggested a deliberate separation between his public persona and his authentic private life. Financial records found in the estate revealed another surprising aspect of Kilmer's life: careful, conservative management of his earnings throughout his career. Despite commanding multi-million-dollar salaries during his peak years, documentation showed that Kilmer had consistently lived below his means, investing significantly in land and art, rather than adopting the lavish lifestyle often associated with Hollywood success. His financial advisors confirmed that he had prioritized long-term security over immediate luxury, establishing trusts for his children and structures to support his philanthropic interests well into the future. This financial prudence contradicted public speculation about Kilmer facing financial difficulties after his illness limited his acting opportunities. While medical expenses had indeed been substantial, his careful planning had ensured that these challenges did not threaten his overall financial stability. Records indicated that the New Mexico property that many had assumed was sold out of financial necessity was actually restructured as part of a deliberate estate planning strategy developed years before his health crisis. Among the most valuable intellectual property discovered in the estate was an extensive archive of behind-the-scenes footage Kilmer had recorded throughout his career. Beginning with his earliest film roles, Kilmer had maintained a practice of documenting his experiences on set, creating thousands of hours of video showing everything from rehearsals to casual interactions with co-stars to the technical aspects of filmmaking. This archive, mostly unseen by the public, represents an unprecedented documentation of Hollywood filmmaking from an insider's perspective across several decades. The footage reveals Kilmer as an obsessive student of his craft, constantly analyzing performances, discussing character motivations with directors, and refining his approach to scenes. It also captures unguarded moments with co-stars like Tom Cruise, Robert Downey Jr., and Marlon Brando, offering new insights into collaborations that produced some of cinema's most memorable moments. Film historians who have reviewed portions of this archive describe it as an invaluable resource for understanding the evolution of American filmmaking from the 1980s through the 2000s and teens. This behind-the-scenes footage also contextualizes some of the on-set conflicts that contributed to Kilmer's difficult reputation. In several instances, what was reported as disruptive behavior appears in the unedited footage as legitimate artistic disagreements or efforts to address genuine production problems. While not absolving Kilmer of all responsibility for tensions during certain productions, these materials suggest a more complex reality than the simplified narrative of a temperamental star that dominated media coverage. The estate also contained materials related to Kilmer's business ventures outside of acting: investment in sustainable development projects in New Mexico, partnership in an arts education foundation, and early investment in several technology startups that yielded significant returns. Documentation showed that Kilmer had approached these ventures with the same intensity and thoroughness he brought to his acting roles, conducting extensive research and surrounding himself with qualified advisors. These materials revealed an entrepreneurial side to Kilmer that he rarely discussed in interviews, suggesting that he viewed his business activities as separate from his public identity as an actor. Among the most historically significant items discovered were materials related to Kilmer's involvement with film projects that achieved iconic status, annotated scripts from Top Gun, costume designs from Batman Forever, research materials from Tombstone, and correspondence with directors like Tony Scott and Oliver Stone. These artifacts offer valuable insights into the creative process behind some of the most successful films of their respective eras. Kilmer's detailed notes on these scripts reveal an analytical approach to character development that contradicts the perception that his performances relied primarily on natural charisma rather than technical craft. The estate evaluation also uncovered evidence of professional relationships and creative collaborations that had never been made public, correspondence about potential projects with directors like Terrence Malick and Christopher Nolan that never materialized, detailed discussions about theatrical productions that remained in development, and exploratory meetings about television series that didn't move forward. These materials paint a picture of a career that might have evolved very differently had certain opportunities come to fruition, suggesting alternative trajectories for Kilmer's artistic journey that few outside his immediate circle ever knew were under consideration. Perhaps most valuable for cinema historians were Kilmer's extensive notes and recordings related to his preparation process for various roles. His approach to becoming Jim Morrison for The Doors is documented in remarkable detail. Voice training exercises, psychological research, physical transformation efforts, and spiritual practices he employed to embody the iconic singer. Similar materials exist for his portrayal of Doc Holliday in Tombstone, Batman in Batman Forever, and other signature roles, offering unprecedented insight into his immersive approach to character development. These preparation materials reveal that what some directors experienced as difficulty or resistance often stemmed from Kilmer's unwillingness to compromise on the psychological truth of his characters. His notes frequently reference concerns about authenticity and artistic integrity, suggesting that his infamous conflicts with certain directors often centered on substantive creative differences rather than mere temperament. While his methods may have created friction on some sets, the depth of preparation documented in these materials suggests that these approaches, however unconventional, were fundamental to the performances that audiences ultimately celebrated. The estate also contained extensive correspondence with fans throughout Kilmer's career. Thousands of letters he had saved, and, surprisingly, copies of his responses to many of them. While most celebrities delegate fan communication to assistants or respond with form letters, evidence suggested that Kilmer had personally answered hundreds of fan letters, particularly those from aspiring actors seeking advice or individuals who had formed meaningful connections with specific performances. This practice, maintained with varying consistency throughout his career, revealed a generosity toward his audience that contradicted his reputation for aloofness. Among the most touching items discovered were materials related to Kilmer's relationship with his brother Wesley, who died in childhood from epilepsy. Though this loss occurred before Kilmer's rise to fame, journals and creative works throughout his adult life make reference to Wesley's enduring influence on his artistic sensibility and spiritual outlook. Several screenplay ideas found in the estate center on themes of brotherly bonds and early loss, suggesting that this formative experience continued to shape Kilmer's creative expression throughout his life in ways he rarely discussed publicly. The estate evaluation also revealed Kilmer's previously unknown connections to various artistic communities beyond Hollywood, correspondence with poets, painters, musicians, and theater directors, showing his engagement with creative circles that operated independently from the film industry. These relationships appeared to provide Kilmer with artistic stimulation and personal connections that sustained him during periods when his film career faced challenges or when he deliberately stepped back from Hollywood projects to pursue other interests. Materials related to Kilmer's spiritual journey throughout his life proved particularly illuminating. Beyond his known connection to Christian Science, documentation showed his exploration of various mystical traditions, Native American spirituality, Buddhist meditation practices, and esoteric Christian teachings. Journals from different periods reveal how these spiritual investigations influenced his approach to acting, particularly his belief that accessing certain emotional states required spiritual rather than merely technical preparation. These materials suggest that what some directors experienced as Kilmer being difficult often reflected a fundamentally different approach to the creative process rooted in his spiritual practices. The estate contained extensive documentation of Kilmer's environmental activism, particularly his efforts to protect wildlife habitats in New Mexico and his advocacy for sustainable water use in the American Southwest. While his public statements on environmental issues had been relatively limited, private correspondence revealed decades of behind-the-scenes work with conservation organizations, substantial financial contributions to environmental causes, and personal involvement in specific preservation initiatives. These activities appeared to intensify during periods when he was less active professionally, suggesting that environmental activism provided meaningful purpose during career transitions. One of the most unexpected discoveries was evidence of Kilmer's long-standing interest in technology and futurism. His library contained hundreds of books on artificial intelligence, space exploration, biotechnology, and technological philosophy, many extensively annotated with his own thoughts and questions. Correspondence showed that he had sought out meetings with technology innovators and scientific researchers, driven by genuine intellectual curiosity rather than investment opportunities. This technological interest seemed to parallel his artistic concerns, particularly questions about human identity, consciousness, and creativity that appear throughout his journals and creative works. The estate evaluation also uncovered evidence of multiple autobiographical projects Kilmer had undertaken at different points in his life, diverse attempts to tell his own story through different media and approaches. Beyond the memoir eventually published as I'm Your Huckleberry, there were earlier manuscript drafts with substantially different focuses, outlines for a more experimental autobiographical film project, and plans for a multimedia exhibition combining personal artifacts, artwork, and video installations. These various approaches to self-representation suggest that Kilmer struggled with how to present his life story in a way that captured its complexity and contradictions. Materials related to Kilmer's throat cancer diagnosis and treatment were particularly poignant, documenting his journey from initial symptoms through diagnosis, treatment decisions, and the profound adjustment to life with altered speech. Medical records show that, contrary to some public speculation, Kilmer did pursue conventional medical treatment alongside his spiritual practices, making thoughtful, informed decisions about his healthcare rather than rejecting medical intervention, as some reports suggested. Journals from this period reveal his struggle to reconcile these treatments with his spiritual beliefs, a nuanced personal journey rather than the simplified narrative often presented in media coverage. Art created during and after his cancer treatment reveals how this health crisis transformed his creative expression. Paintings and mixed media pieces from this period show a shift toward more abstract forms, bolder colors, and themes of transformation and rebirth. Accompanying writings indicate that losing his voice, his primary instrument as an actor, forced him to develop new modes of expression, ultimately expanding rather than diminishing his creative range. These materials offer insight into how Kilmer transformed a devastating health challenge into an opportunity for artistic evolution and spiritual growth. The estate evaluation ultimately revealed Val Kilmer as a far more complex, thoughtful, and multifaceted individual than his public image suggested. An artistic polymath whose interests and talents extended far beyond acting, a deeply spiritual seeker whose religious practices informed his creative choices, a committed environmentalist and philanthropist who deliberately kept his good works private, and a devoted father who prioritized his children despite the challenges of a high-profile career and divorce. Perhaps most significantly, these discoveries challenge the prevailing narrative of Kilmer as merely difficult or eccentric, suggesting instead an artist of uncommon integrity who sometimes sacrificed career opportunities to maintain his creative and personal authenticity. The materials found in his estate reveal someone who consistently prioritized artistic truth over commercial considerations, spiritual growth over public approval, and private fulfillment over fame. Choices that may have limited his Hollywood success, but enabled a rich, multi-dimensional life that few outside his immediate circle ever fully appreciated.